Good evening and welcome to TV Tuần-san News of the Week. My name's Emma Doe. In what's making headlines this week, Vietnam accused of state-sponsored hacking. A Rolex watch owned by Vietnam's last emperor sells for over $5 million. And an arts exhibition in Melbourne presents an alternative reading of the Vietnam War. In this week's top story, a recent report released by a US cybersecurity company reveals that Vietnamese hackers have been hacking into foreign companies for years. The California-based company FireEye said it believes that the hacking group known as Ocean Lotus is linked to the Vietnamese government. FireEye has watched the group target foreign companies for information since 2014 in sectors such as manufacturing, hospitality and consumer products. A primary author of the report told the New York Times that the Ocean Lotus Group accessed personnel details and other data that would only be useful to the Vietnamese government. A spokeswoman for the Vietnamese Foreign Ministry called the accusations groundless and stated that Vietnam does not allow cyber attacks or threats to cyber security. The authoritarian Vietnamese government is known to regularly spy on journalists, activists and political dissidents in the country. Some activists have also claimed to be targets of state-sponsored hacking. Now, closer to home, an art exhibition featuring the works of Melbourne-based visual artist Phương Ngo has opened to the public at the substation in Newport. The collection of war photography shown through a series of intimate moments and large-scale installations is part of Phung's ongoing artwork called the Vietnam Archive Project. Van Nguyen has more.
After almost 2 years in development, Phương Ngo has put together a number of works to feature in his new exhibition titled Conflicted. The exhibition explores the political and social aspects of war through the lens of service men and women. It also comprises of a series of intimate moments and large-scale installations offering a nuanced and alternative reading of the Vietnam War.
Interesting enough, the reason why I called the exhibition Conflicted is because that's just it. I feel conflicted. These are other people's works. These are other people's histories, but for some way or another they've come into my possession. So I'm conflicted in the sense that, you know, I'm using someone else's source, like my source material is someone else's work. But also I think there's a beauty in the poetics in which how they've come into my kind of grimy little hands, in that they're very tactile objects, they're very beautiful objects. And I'm treating them with a level of respect that I don't necessarily think they'd be treated with should someone else get a hand on the collection, because a lot of it is just sold on from estate sales with people trying to make money.
Conflicted uses found images and objects from Phung's ongoing artwork called the Vietnam Archive Project, which started in 2010. It currently consists of over 20,000 items, including slides, photos, documents and objects. To Phung, the Vietnam Archive Project started out as a simple curiosity. It then snowballed into this ever-growing collection of items.
The reason why I'm doing it is because it's about collecting moments in history that have determined my existence. So it's kind of like grasping onto another human's experience that came well before me, because these photos are taken from the early colonial period right up to the 70s. But they hold a sense of vernacular imagery and history and memory that determines who I am as a Vietnamese Australian.
That was Van Nguyen reporting. You can watch the full story on our website at tvtsonline.com.au. Vietnam's largest dairy firm, Vinamilk, has been given the green light to officially export its milk products to China. The agreement was made during the Vietnamese president's recent visit to China, where the leaders discussed facilitating imports of Vietnamese farm products. Vinamilk is Vietnam's #1 dairy firm and one of the world's 50 largest milk companies in terms of revenue. In 2016, its export turnover was $258 million. A Taiwanese garment firm, which was consumed by a massive fire in the southern Vietnamese city of Cần Thơ earlier this year, will receive compensation of $18 million. On Tuesday, local police said investigations concluded that the fire at Quang Damico company had been sparked by an electrical fault in March. Meanwhile, an independent unit hired by the company's insurance firm confirmed that the total financial damage caused was 368 billion Vietnamese dong, the equivalent of some 22 million Australian dollars. The insurer has agreed to cover the damages. Both the fire's magnitude and the compensation settlements were the record highs for the Cần Thơ industrial sector. A legendary Rolex, once owned by the last emperor of Vietnam, has set a new world record for the highest price ever achieved at an auction. The Rolex wristwatch fetched over $5 million at the Geneva watch auction held by Philips and Aurelbachs over the weekend. The exceptional rare watch, previously bought by Vietnam's late Emperor Bảo Đại during the Geneva peace negotiations in 1954, was sold to an unidentified bidder on the phone. The bidding war lasted 8 minutes among 10 in-room bidders and 3 on the phone. Crafted in 18-karat yellow gold with a triple calendar and moon phase indication, the Bảo Đại Rolex is one of only 3 black dial models known to exist with diamond hour markers. Bảo Đại was the 13th and final emperor of the Quang dynasty. He officially took to the throne in 1925 at the age of 12. Police in Vietnam have issued a rare wanted warrant for one influential environmental activist and arrested another government dissident in the same week. On Friday last week, police in Hà Tĩnh province, where the Formosa spill happened last year, launched a nationwide manhunt for environmental activist Bác Hồng Quang. Just a day earlier, police had attempted to serve the warrant to Quang at both his house and his parents' house. It was then that police told Quang's wife that her responsibility was to persuade him to report to the police and confess. Quang is accused of disturbing public order through an environmental protest held on April 3rd. On Monday this week, Nghệ An police arrested 34-year-old activist Quang Damico, who has campaigned against Hanoi's handling of the Formosa toxic waste spill. Quang will be held for 90 days, with police accusing him of organising a public demonstration and creating social disorder. Police have defended the arrest, stating it was in accordance with the law. According to Radio Free Asia, hundreds of people blocked off traffic in Nghệ An following Quang's arrest before demanding for his release at the district government office. The Taiwan-owned Formosa steel plant in Hà Tĩnh province last year released toxic wastewater into the Vietnamese coastline, killing an estimated 115 tons of fish and impacting the livelihoods of many fishermen. The APEC summit has kicked off in Hanoi, with the Vietnamese Deputy Prime Minister opening the 24th economic meeting between Asia-Pacific countries. In his opening address, the Deputy Prime Minister Pham Binh Minh told leaders that the region's prospects hinged on how countries would handle the challenges of increased inequality, climate change, population challenges, and productivity stagnation. Earlier this week, it was also revealed that the new US Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer will attend a meeting of Asia-Pacific trade ministers this weekend in Vietnam. Lighthizer will meet with many countries who signed up to the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, which President Donald Trump dumped as one of his first acts in office. The APEC summit will see leaders from countries such as China, Vietnam, Australia, and Japan convene to promote free trade in the region. To news around the world. Japan has overtaken the US to become the biggest buyer of Vietnamese prawns. According to the latest report compiled by the Vietnam Association of Seafood Exporters and Producers, exports to Japan increased by nearly 30% compared to last year. According to the organisation, that spike was caused by a rise in the Japanese yen. The report also found that Japanese consumers were switching to cheaper seafoods such as prawns, which are more affordable compared to tuna, salmon and squid. 2 runaway Vietnamese workers and a Taiwanese man have been arrested in New Taipei City for illegally growing marijuana and forging official IDs. They were caught by police as part of a raid after a tip-off. Taipei City's police department said the 2 Vietnamese men, identified as La Van Nguyen and Nguyen Van Vu, rented an apartment with a Taiwanese accomplice, known only by his surname Lee. It's believed the trio grew marijuana together, while the Vietnamese workers also forged alien residence certificates for both their own use and for sale. Police data revealed the runaways entered Taiwan as migrant workers in 2013. Vietnam's latest tourism ambassador and the director of Quang Skull Island is planning to offer a number of US scholarships to Vietnamese art students. At a press conference in Ho Chi Minh City on Tuesday, Jordan Vogt Roberts told media that he was working on establishing a scholarship fund which will offer $90,000 a year to Vietnamese students. The 4-year scholarships would pay for study fees, materials, living expenses and travel to cover the Vietnamese students' time in the US. Winners of the scholarship will be able to major in subjects such as cinema, photography, fashion, games design and dance. Vogt Roberts stressed the need to provide opportunities, particularly for female students, who he said the film industry needs more of. The scholarships will be launched in 2018. That's all from TV Tuần-san News of the Week. For more stories, you can follow TV Tuần-san at tvtsonline.com.au and at Facebook at TV Tuần-san. I'm Emma Doe, thank you so much for watching and I look forward to your company at the same time next week.